Hola amigos de Wine News TV, les invito a conectar conmigo y con mis invitados en Wine News TV On The Go, un podcast que a su vez es un espacio donde aprenderás sobre el mágico mundo del vino a través de invitados de todas partes del mundo que nos contarán sobre sus proyectos para obsequiarnos de forma embotellada música, fuego y leones, como decía el gran maestro argentino Jorge Luis Borges en su poema Soneto al Vino. Hola amigos de Wine News TV, estamos nuevamente en vivo, arranca el 2025, qué placer para mí traerles contenido fresco y frío, porque literalmente me estoy congelando, estoy en los Finger Lakes, concretamente de los lagos que son 11, en Seneca Lake, estoy con mi amigo Scott Osborne, presidente, copropietario de Fox Run Vineyards. Esta es una bodega que está aquí en Penn en Seneca, en los Finger Lakes, que llega a Puerto Rico con todo vino de Pan American. Hemos estado pasando un día maravilloso haciendo contenido para las redes sociales, que seguramente ustedes ya lo han visto, porque llevo ya unos días y este contenido va a salir cuando lleguemos a Puerto Rico. Now I'm going to switch on to English. Scott, I am freezing my humanity, my bones. How are you, sir?
I'm wonderful. It's just a nice balmy day up here, 31 degrees.
balmy day.
Yep.
All right, so for the purpose of the audience who's listening, where in the world are we? We're in New York State, but why here?
Well, if you look at a map of New York State, there is up in the upper left-hand part of it, there's a bunch of lakes that look like fingers.
Right.
And I call them the Fabulous Finger Lakes. They were named, the Indians even named them the Finger Lakes because they look like fingers. And,
like placed by a god,
yes,
from above.
Yep, and I think there's an old Indian saying that God placed his hands in the Finger Lakes to make to show that this is the spot.
Okay.
This is the holy spot. And, just the lakes moderate the temperatures. Seneca Lake especially is just a beautiful lake. It's long. It's 35 miles long, and it's about 2 to 3 miles wide, 650 feet deep. So, and the last time it froze was 1912.
Before that, Scott Osborne, the man, because I always like to also entertain the idea that it's never impossible for a person chasing a passion to start something in the world of wine. So you were in real estate, and at some point in your life, you were in your late 30s, early 40s, you decided that this was your way forward. Tell me a bit about yourself. Where were you born? Where did you grow up? Were you exposed to wine through your parents? Was your home a place where wine was served? I want to learn about the man behind Fox Run Vineyards.
So I was born in Indiana, and my father did his PhD in Indiana and got a job at the University of Rochester. And thank you.
Sure.
And so we moved here when I was in 6th grade.
Okay.
And so I grew
12
up.
12 years old.
Yep.
11. Okay.
And I went away to college. I went to a Quaker school called Friends World College. They had campuses all over the world. So I was exposed to an international, different ways of living.
This is the 70s.
This is the 60s.
The 60s, okay.
Yep. I graduated high school in 67.
Okay.
And I went to this college and lived in Kenya for a while, lived in India, lived in Japan.
Doing church work?
No, it was a Quaker college.
Okay.
But it was not a religious college.
Okay.
It was just formed by the New York Yearly Meeting as a radical education. And so after that, I went out to California and got involved in real estate. And at one point, the interest rates
This is early 70s now.
This is 79.
79. Okay. That's 2 years after I was born.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Oh, so I was born 77.
Good. So interest rates hit 22%, and there was no real estate selling. And my girlfriend at the time got me a job hand labeling bottles of wine for the Stanford Alumni Association at Canocti Winery in Lake County. She, after harvest was over, she got the job as assistant.
Some famous alumni from Stanford, very important Ivy League school. So you probably were packaging and putting labels for former presidents, former everything.
Yes, and then she got the job at Firestone, assistant winemaker. And so
I know Firestone very well. I still consume their products.
Yeah, and that was my first real vintage.
Is it Ironstone or is Firestone still? Yeah, but there's an Ironstone and a Firestone. Firestone's still running, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah,
and it was started by the Brooks Firestone, the Firestone family, and it was just an incredible place to work. And I just fell in love with the industry. And
how long were you there for?
I was there for about 1.5 years, and then I moved to over to Zaca Mesa and became their cellar master.
But let me touch on this for a bit. So you were obviously in a personal relationship with a former girlfriend. There was the sentimental component to it. You were hired for a job, putting labels on bottles, and I assume that during that time you had the exposure of tasting wines, right? And probably you fell in love with the nuances, the complexities, the taste, the history of Chardonnay, Cabernet, Pinot Noir. But it was still work, right? At what point did you say this is a path forward, this is a career, much more than just placing labels on bottles? I want to learn how to make the thing.
I decided that at Firestone, and I was working on the bottling line, and then I was working in the cellar, and because of my relationship with Lane, she would always be going to these tastings, and so I got to go along because I was the significant other, and was introduced to all these Pinot Noirs down there in Santa Barbara County, and was introduced to wines from all over California.
So you were drinking these wines before they were known for the world, because nowadays Pinots from California are known all over the world. So you were exposed to them late 70s, early 80s.
Yeah, and there were only 8 wineries in Santa Barbara.
Oh my God! Do you recall which was the charter, or which was the parting of the waters, if you can use that term? But do you have like an epiphany wine? Can you? Because I have one. It was a Priorat wine from Spain. But can you recall a wine that was a before and after for you that sort of like blew your mind away?
So in 1984, I came back for Christmas holiday to see my parents in Rochester, and I went wine tasting. At that time, there were probably 20 wineries in all the Finger Lakes. And we ended up at Wagner Vineyards, which is on the other side of the lake from here.
Wagner, Wagner.
Yes.
Wagner.
And I tasted a 1982 Chardonnay, and it was an epiphany. It was the first incredible cool climate wine I'd ever had.
And this is after you had a couple of California wines.
Oh, lots of California.
Oh my God! So this is very revealing to me.
And
your epiphany was a New York wine.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a cool climate wine. And what I liked about it was the brightness, the freshness, the deliciousness that I was experiencing that I had never experienced before with wines from a warmer climate. And I went back and Ken Brown was the winemaker owner, and he was a winemaker at Zaca Mesa, and I gave him notice. I said, I'm going to go back east and make cool climate wines. And he said to me,
"You're crazy."
Yeah. And he said, "You'll never make a red wine again." And because it's so cold back there that the wines freeze in the barrels. And I go, "Oh, okay, that's very interesting." And as you can see, I do make some red wines and
fantastic red wines. So we're gonna talk, and we have 2 wines to taste, but I really want to hone in on the entrepreneurial side, because now that you have the finished product, if you will, it's maybe easy to think you've always been successful, but at some point there was risk involved, there was time, a lot of time involved, and maybe there was hesitation. Maybe there was a time where you were not sure this is going to work. So this is early 80s that you came back and you said,
So it was 1985 I moved back here.
mid 80s, okay.
And I couldn't get a job as a winemaker. And so I started working in a retail wine shop, and then then started working for a distributor, and then was hired to be general manager of Run Vineyards on Long Island. Because the distributor I was working for.
But did you get hired because in the intervening years between you falling in love with Wagner and 85, did you study, did you learn, did you hone in your skills? Because it's not easy to get that type of job as a general manager. Did you sort of, self-teach yourself in the wine business?
Yes, because working in the retail shops, I learned the whole retail part of it and the buying part of it for retailers. And then working for a distributor, I learned how to sell to restaurants and retail shops, wine shops. And so when I was interviewing at Pindar, that's what they were looking for, somebody who could manage the company, but who could also sell to distributors. And I had learned all of that, and I was cheap.
no kids back then, not yet. Okay.
Nothing.
Was cheap. I love that.
So I started working at Pindar, and there were only 8 or 9 wineries at that time out on Long Island, and we made the first red to sell for $20, and it was our Meritage, and it broke the glass ceiling, so to speak, of red wines from Long Island that you could sell for $20. Now they're selling for $40, $50, $100 a bottle. And my father came down with cancer. And I would come up every other weekend or so to hang out with him because he didn't really need me. He was married, and I happened to run into I tried to buy a winery at one point and met an attorney, and he and I became very good friends because we both like to read science fiction. And I was telling him,
damn attorneys.
Yeah.
I am.
He was great.
He
still is.
My followers know me. Yeah. Science fiction. Yeah.
Science fiction.
When I tell my clients in Puerto Rico that I serve as their lawyer, no, I'm going to be away for 10 days. I'm going to be doing wine content. What? Yes. Yeah. That's what feeds my heart for the rest of the year, to tend to your freaking controversies.
So, I was telling him about how my experience at Pindar, and that, now I had all the aspects of being able to start a winery, because I knew how to make it, I knew how to sell it, and I knew how to manage it. And he goes, well, I have one of my clients here is very interested in backing some odd projects. And that's how I met my first partner. And Andy he was a direct descendant of the Mayflower. He was an old curmudgeon. He was a character. He was one of the nicest people I've ever met. And he and I met, and I started talking about wine. And and there's a winery in Rochester called Genesee Brewery, and Genesee made this thing called I'm having a brain dead, Genesee Cream Ale. And Andy used to drink. That was his drink of choice. Mm-hmm. And he was a 2-pack a day smoker.
Okay.
And so I started talking to him about wine and buying a winery. So I'll back a winery. And so I showed him about 10 or 15 different wineries. And he kept saying, no. And finally, the woman who was running his construction company, who is now my wife, Ruth, he said, listen, if you show Ruth the next winery, and if she likes it, I'll come look at it.
Oh my! That's how much he trusted it.
Yeah.
He trusted her.
Oh yeah, and so showed her a couple more wineries, and then Fox Run, the owners of Fox Run called me up, and this is 1992, And Larry Wildrick calls me up and he said, Scott, I understand you're looking around to buy a winery, and I'd like to sell our winery to you.
We're going to get into that part in a bit about the origins of Fox Run.
So Larry gives me a call and says, Scott, we'd like to sell the winery to you. And I said, well, why do you want to sell the winery? And he goes, well, it's not retirement. And I'm thinking in my head, oh, shit, yeah, it isn't retirement. And I said, so, well, why do you want to sell it to me? And he said, well, we don't want to make the second mistake in the wine business.
Which is?
And I said, what's the first mistake?
Exactly, which is?
And he said, starting a winery and not knowing what you're doing.
And the second mistake?
Is to sell it to somebody who doesn't know what they're doing.
Okay.
And we know that you've been in this business for,
But the second mistake is predicated on compassion, not making somebody else commit the same mistake.
Yeah, but if you combine it, yeah, exactly. But if you can combine it with retirement, you have just made a real mistake.
Yeah.
And they wanted to see their grandkids, and that meant going out on the weekends. And if you own a winery, you got to be there on the weekends. And it's interesting because I'm very open. I mean, you can ask me any question about the wine industry, and I'll tell you. You can take it or leave it, because this is the way that I've operated. This is what I do, and I'm free to give out all that information. Because
Scott, I've been doing this for a while. I've done 700 interviews. I tend to see a pattern. People that are in this business are visionaries. They're very open people who enjoy working with land, who do not like the hypocrisies of the other world, where you have commodities and you have to make trade-offs and you have to calculate risk. You're following a passion. You're working with the land. You're very mindful that you're tending to a site that probably has been tended to for 2,000-3,000 years, maybe more than that, and that you're just passing by, and that some other people will take care of it for the next 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 years if we don't F things up, right?
Correct.
So I've interviewed people from a lot of countries, and I don't want to say that you fit the pattern, but you are the type of person who enjoys and loves what he does, and is also very mindful that you're part of a large chain of people who have tried to bring out the best of the soil, the earth, the winds, the elements, the sun, the rain, the earth, and provide pleasure in the class without any bullshit. That's what I love about this industry. And I'm not a participant player. I'm in the outside, but I think I'm sort of a satellite of the industry.
For as long as I can remember in being involved in the wine industry, I've always liked the social interaction and the ability to, sit down with a couple of people, and you don't even know. And in many cases, sometimes you don't even really speak the same language. You just speak, a few words of each, and you can still communicate.
Yeah, right.
And you develop a relationship. And what's so fascinating about this industry is that you can go anywhere in the world, pretty much anywhere in the world, and get a job working in a winery. Mm-hmm. And all the kids that come to work for me from Hobart William Smith or Keuka College, if they develop the passion, and some of them do, I say, before you get married, go to another country and work in a winery. Go to Australia, go to Chile, go to Europe. Do that while you can, because once you get married and settle down, it's going to be harder to do that kind of stuff.
At least if you believe in the rest of your life concept.
Yes.
Yeah.
And a number of them have. A number of them have become winemakers that are fairly well known. The Kelby and Julia both started here.
Oh, from Apollo Sprays.
From Apollo Sprays.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm drinking some of that tonight.
Yeah. And they went off. They met in my tasting room, and they.
Oh my God! Are you kidding me? You met here?
Yeah.
I spoke to Julia. They're in Europe now, but they were featuring Decanter Top 50 Wines of the Year. I love this. I love this industry. My God. And you're such, but you're the type of leader, and trust me, I've worked with politicians, with capital partners and major law firms. I've worked with my wife, who's the toughest boss that I've have.
I see that.
And you're the sort of mentor, leader, a person who leads. I don't want to say the cliche phrase by example, but through passion. You're here. You've been doing it because not only is it that you care for those who are coming up, but you enjoy it. Even if it's only 5% selfishness, you enjoy coming and talking to clients and opening a bottle of Riesling and seeing the fruits of your labor. But it's not really your labor. It's the labor of the soil, the earth, the winds, the elements. Like wine is something that, I was, I'm staying at the place where you live for 27 years. And I was about to go to bed, and I was about to, drop down for the day. I had a long day traveling from Puerto Rico yesterday. And I was thinking, and I didn't know last night that the vines closer to my room were Chardonnay. I thought they were Riesling. And I said, those little vines out there are dying of cold. But 6 months from now, they're going to be lush and green and beautiful. And they're going to be providing the best fruit possible for some of the most sought after wines anywhere in the world. So it's about patience, and it's about, being there, staying the course.
And it's interesting being here in the Finger Lakes, where the seasons change. And it's interesting because I remember my friend Lane, who got me into the business. Lane came back to visit early on, and she went out tasting and tasted in a bunch of places. And she came back and she goes, what's amazing? She goes, in California, she goes, every vintage is the same.
Yeah, Coca-Cola.
And she goes,
vintages.
You're going to be lucky to have 2 vintages the same in 10 years. And she's right. And a lot of people say, well, aren't you worried about the coming year or next year? What's going to happen? I go, no, because there's nothing you can do about it. It's Mother Nature.
Of
and
course.
You deal with it on a day-to-day basis. And I remember a couple of years ago, we had, it got down to 27 degrees here on May 18th.
Oh my God!
Coldest
May.
Yeah, and even the fan that out there, the fan that we have, the frost fan.
Yeah, I saw it.
It wasn't even working because it was 27 degrees and it was blowing 31-degree temperatures.
It was not reacting to reality.
No.
Yeah, it was disconnected from reality.
So I have very good friends who own vineyards, and I was talking to one of them a couple of days later, and she goes, I was up every 10 minutes looking and watching the temperature, and I go, why did you do that? And she goes, well, I wanted to see what was going on. I said, I went to sleep, and I woke up the next morning and said, okay, what the hell happened last night?
Why do we humans want to control things through technology? And technology has been around maybe 2 centuries, less than that, real technology, when things have been going on the same way for thousands of years. Why are we so selfish?
And you can't control that. And so why have anxiety over it? Just go to bed and wake up, and then you deal with the problem that you have there. And, it was weird because there were vines, and I had 6-inch shoots out. And there were vines that there would be 6 or 8 shoots that were black, because they were frosted, and then they would have 6 or 7 shoots on the other side of the vine that were bright green and alive, and nobody can understand why that happened.
But not necessarily is it a problem. It's reality, and it's how you frame it, how you capture it, and
then how do you deal with it? Exactly. And okay, so what do we need to do now? This is what happened. And that's one of the fabulous things about living here and working here and growing grapes here, is because every day and every year is a new challenge.
Yeah, they say that
we have to go.
They say that calm seas don't create good sailors.
No,
you have to have rough storms and rough.
And so we are able to adapt to things. I remember my friend Dave Monksgaard from Iron Horse, and he'd worked at Glenora.
Yeah.
And one day I called him up, and we were crushing our Merlot. And I said, "Hey, Dave, I just want you to know I'm crushing my Merlot right now." And I've been reading, because it's been raining up in Sonoma and Napa. And he goes, "Oh, God damn it." He goes, "I haven't even picked Chardonnay yet." He goes, "But I'm the only winemaker that sleeps at night." And I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "I keep telling these guys it's a Finger Lakes vintage, and don't worry about it. But they're all worried that they're going to lose all the crop." And he says, "You just wait through it. It rains. Like, it rains here on the 25th of September every year. And that's right in the middle of the Chardonnay harvest."
Let's get into that part, and then we get into the wines, because I'm going to be here for a couple of days, and I just want to be mindful of your time. You spend most of the day with me, and I'm staying at your former house, Finger Lakes. If you can paint a portrait for listeners, and I hope that through the miracle of technology, people that are interested in wine will listen to this episode 10, 20, 30 years from now, when the Finger Lakes is probably the new thing. It's not the new thing I wish it were, or it was. But give me a broad stroke, if you will, in 3-4 minutes, of the Finger Lakes. Why is it the right place to grow wine and grow grapes and make kick-ass wine? The Finger Lakes, New York State.
Well, the Finger Lakes, they're bodies of water, and they really moderate the temperatures. The interesting thing is that grapes, you always talk about warmer climates. They have bud break in March, and they do harvest in August, September, and October, and a lot of that it's so long is because it's so hot, and the vines basically shut down because they're trying to survive. They respirate, and the optimum temperature to grow grapes is 75 to 90 degrees. And if we have, like this past year, we had 3 days above 90. And so our grapes ripen up faster, they grow faster. And so in a 3-month period, our grapes do the same development that in a warmer climate. And that,
in terms of stress
plus the fact that, yes, because they're not under oppressive heat, so they can grow, and rather than trying to save all the water, and for the vine, they can just function normal, and then we have some really talented winemakers that have been moving in the last 25 years.
I met a unique person earlier today who gifted me a bottle of a 2001 Riesling from you guys. Peter
Bell.
What a man. Like, I spent 10 minutes with him, and he quoted Pablo Neruda, and we talked about politics, and because I had a life in politics for a bit. We spoke about attorneys, and we spoke about languages and romantic languages, and how Spanish, my mother tongue, is so florid and so lush and so ripe, and English is sometimes like the barren winter. Who's that unicorn of a person? Tell me about the human being that I met.
Peter's really, he's a character, and
he's a character. He's a character from a novel.
Yeah, and he and I met. But before I got married, I was doing a lot of judging, and because if it was a West Coast tasting, they would always put a couple of Finger Lakes people together so that they could judge, because they would be tasting Finger Lakes wines, and they could judge, and then they could tell other judges what to expect. And so Peter and I, he was working for Dr. Frank's, and Peter and I just became friends, and we at one point I realized that I had a choice to make. This is 1995, that I either had to hire somebody who could make better wine than I could, or I had to hire somebody who could run a company better than I could. And I decided I could sell better than I could make wine. And so I let it be known that I was looking for a winemaker. And Peter, with some convincing, came to work for us. And he was here for 27 years.
That's beautiful.
And
he's still here in a way.
Oh yeah, no, he comes in. He's still
with sufficient power to give me a wine that he made, and I'm gonna bring that home and treasure it and probably drink it for my birthday. That's the type of wine that I will open for my birthday. I will say, because life is about the transition of life into something that it's not. It's either you're alive or you're not. But while you're alive, you're always reminded of when you will not. And I don't know if I'm translating this into English correctly, but I think that wine has a huge component of people you meet, memories you cherish, and snapshots, mementos of pebbles you collect at the beach, the shore of the wave, and then you touch them, you get near to them, but they will never be the same. They live in your memory like a decantation of a wine, and it will never be the same as earlier today when I met Peter. But let's say 6 months or a year from now, when I open that wine, I'll be reminded of that moment when I met him and he spoke truth to my face, and I'll be able to touch and feel that for a bit, even if it's just for 5 seconds. And then I'll pour the wine and it'll be transported to the moment.
And that is what that's one of the many things that wine is all about. And that's why, for 6,000 years, this has been going on. And, you are going to be fortunate to take an old aged Riesling from Fox Run that Peter dug out of the wine library.
For me, like something in my life with my broken English, my Latino accent, my ugly mug, my short, stocky body, he said, "This fatso deserves to have a bottle of this." And he took it and gifted it to me.
Yep.
So when I open it, at some point, I'll reciprocate what he felt in giving it to me, and I'll say, "I'm drinking this on your name." Even if God willing, he's still with us. But I've opened many a bottle of people who are no longer here, and when I taste or drink or review or whatever that, I bring that person back to life.
So it's interesting how you say that, because when I was working for Firestone, they sell their wines all over the country, and I had a friend of mine that I had gone to college with, Suki, and she lives in Connecticut, and so I was talking to her one day, and she said, "Oh, I buy your wines, and then when I have friends over, I pour your wine, and I say, this is made by my friend Scott." And then she tells stories and of our time in college. And so she has these memories that she shares with other people over that bottle of wine, which I think is another fascinating thing about
it's
wine.
Gorgeous, because in the wine you find a little bit of yourself.
Yeah.
Like, this has the spark of his personality. This has the restraint of his, I don't know, wit. And then this has the explosiveness of his generosity. I don't know. Like, wine reflects people.
But if you do that on your birthday and you have friends over, you're going to tell them that story.
Of course.
It'll resonate with them.
I was thinking of opening that wine that Peter gifted to me the last night here. No, I'm bringing it back home. I will turn, if God allows me.
When's your birthday?
August the 30th.
Oh, good. You want to set that down for
for a bit. Yeah. No bottle shot. No bottle shot.
No travel shot.
No travel shot. Yeah. But I will probably open that with my family and say, "Yeah, I was in Fox Run drinking this with Peter and Scott and Garrison and Craig. And then I can only be back here for a minute or so through memory." All right, let's get into the wines, because it's this 35 minutes we've been talking.
Uh-huh.
So we have the
The
Fox Run Vineyards, Silver and Riesling, Seneca Lakes, Finger Lakes. Tell me about this one, my friend.
2023.
2023.
So
Fairly recent.
our Sylvan is, my
Cheers,
wife
man.
and I.
Cheers. Cheers for this.
My wife and I were in the Mosel. I know a couple of people who own wineries there, and we visited them, and I noticed down in their cellars, because we're owners, we get.
Oh my God, you got.
They take us down, and so we get to.
But you don't have to be owners to have the perks. You can be a blogger.
Yeah,
I know of a blogger who's friends with a winery owner who sleeps in his house.
So I noticed all these.
Where have you gone? Can you name wineries in the Mosel? Because I got friends there.
Yeah, I can, but I can't. Okay. I can't recover.
We'll share notes of the record for a bit, but there's some good people over there.
Oh yeah, Johannes Selbach.
Of course.
And I had an amazing tasting of.
Have you been to the Prum, JJ Prum, and those guys? Schloss Johannesburg.
No.
We'll share contacts offline because I would. Are you going back to Germany anytime soon? Not for now. No, you don't need to. You've mastered. You don't need to. Okay. All right. So you visited there, and we're tasting the Sylvan Riesling, and you thought to yourself, what?
There's something in German Rieslings that is unique.
Of course.
And I've always been searching for that. And, I saw all these big, large oak casks that were, some 30, 50, 100 years old. And it came back and asked Peter that if we could have some old.
When was this again in time? 2000?
2015, 14.
So before this, you weren't making any oak age Riesling? No, just steel tank.
All steel. Okay. And so Peter was reluctant to try it because, the people who were doing oak Rieslings had oaky Rieslings. And I said, well, no, use the oldest barrel that we have in-house, that has absolutely no flavor, and see what happens. And so he fermented it in the barrel and then kept it in there for 2 months. It lost all the aromatics. It was a beautiful wine, sold like that. So the next year we did 2 barrels, and he fermented it in the barrel and then kept it in the barrel for 1 month. And it still lost that aromatic. And what we were searching for was...
Riesling is all about aromatics.
Yeah, correct. But what I was searching for, what he was searching for, was the creaminess, the smoothness of the palate. And so the third year, he did 6 barrels and pulled it out immediately after it fermented dry. And we were able to get that creaminess and still keep the aromatics. And that's what we were searching for. And so we are upping the production of this a little bit at a time. It is a relatively complex and dry Riesling, which...
It's spectacular. Like you and your wife left me a note last night when I got into the property. It was a 2021. And this, in my descriptor, was a very mineral, was very... complex, and it had a touch of nectarines and a little bit of ginger and spice, but it had the backbone of obviously it's New York, but my thermometer of sorts is Germany and Mosel and the Rhine Rieslings, where you have that steely spine of acidity. And I guess that in the second mid palate or the mid palate, you have the bone fruit and the apricot, and you have the nectarine and jasmine and ginger, and it's a gorgeous bottle of wine.
So it's the kind of wine that has to be tasted, and there's tons of people out there who believe that all Rieslings are sweet, so they don't taste them.
Okay.
And but once people taste this, who like dry wines, they're floored. And so we're increasing the production a little bit at a time. It's great food wine.
It's gorgeous. This is a gorgeous bottle of wine. Like, for those out there listening in whatever country, whichever country you are listening to, If they don't have New York wines, if they don't have Fox Run Vineyards, ask your importer, your distributor to reach out. This is a Sylvan Riesling, a gorgeous bottle of wine that's 12.5, 12.6 alcohol content, very dry, very mineral, very reminds me of those muscat wines from France that you pair with oysters that are steely and then make your palate not only salivate but rock. And I was telling Craig earlier today that it's seldom do you find a wine that can cause extreme sensations in a palate of honey and sort of a sensation of sweet fruit, which is not the case here, but also on the opposite side of that equation, grapefruit and citrus fruit and acidic fruit. And to me, your Rieslings, at least this one, is a combination of polar opposites that find themselves in the middle. And you have not the reality of sweetness, but the approximation of it. And then you have the citrus, crunchy, delicious, thirst quenching fruit. I don't know if I'm making any sense at all, but delicious.
I'm salivating.
But delicious, my friend.
Good.
This is gorgeous. Now, before we wrap up, because I've had you for 40 minutes and I know you have many things to do, I was floored by Lemberger. This is the unoaked Fox Run Vineyards Lemberger, and I just want you to take a bit of your time to explain to the audiences about this variety, maybe or not that known for my crowds. This great Lemberger. Tell me about the unoaked Fox Run Vineyards Lemberger, Scott.
So Lemberger is pretty much Austrian, Eastern European grape variety. That's where it's grown predominantly. It's a beautiful, cool climate red. Grows really well in cooler climates. In the warmer climates, it tends to get really overly peppery. I think it just gets too ripe, and I think one of the things that people don't really know about is that wines can be underripe, they can be ripe, and then they can be overripe.
Yeah.
And you get different characteristics in each one of those different categories. And Lemberger, when it gets overripe, is not as appealing.
It's jam.
Yeah, and this, that the acidity is like a lot of years we have to reduce the acidity because it's very acidic wine. It is it's sort of the Rodney Dangerfield of grape varieties because it's got 50 to 60.
I get no respect.
Yeah, and because nobody can decide what to call it. So they call it Lemberger, they call it Blaufränkisch, they call it Cake Frankisch,
yeah.
And then there's another 50 names after that. And but I like Lemberger as a word because I can pronounce it. I never mess it up, and it's such a food wine, and it's so good with pork.
Okay, so I just want to say this for a bit here for those of you who have stayed long enough in the 27 countries to follow this page. If you're out there and you like Mencia, you like Bonarda, you like Gamay, you like the Barbera di Alba, Barbera di Asti. If you like those wines that have soul, that have minerality and herbs and dry sort of blood, citrusy notes, this is the wine that Dracula would drink. Herbs and minty and very quaffable. Is that a word? Quaffable?
Yes.
Quaffable. Easy to drink. That you could pair with a burger, with a steak, with dog nachos. This is spectacular.
And your father-in-law wants to pair it with cigars.
Yeah, my father-in-law, he would love to pair this with cigars because he loves Italian wines. This is a spectacular wine, Lemberger. I will make sure that this gets out there and gets known by my audience, for whatever large or small that is. This is delicious. This is frankly fantastic. Why does Lemberger work here in the Finger Lakes, aside from the climate?
Uh, Early on, when I first started here, we were searching for red varieties, and people were planting all sorts of different red varieties. I mean, one of my neighbors, Red-tailed Ridge, has Terrell Godot.
Teroldego, yeah, from Italy,
Yeah,
Teroldego, yeah. Foradori makes those wines, yeah.
and that's just an example.
How did it go? How did it go?
And she actually makes a sparkling wine out of
From
it.
Teroldego?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah. I can see some relationship. There's a little bit of that bacon fat in it.
Well, and it's also got great acidity.
Yeah.
And so we planted Lemberger. I originally planted it for color, for Pinot Noir, and was in Hungary, and my winemaker Peter at the time said, I can make wines like this, and the same wines that were being made in Eger. And so we made wines from it, and they became incredibly succcessful. And
when was this? What year?
This is 1997. Was the first vintage that we made.
Spectacular wine. I mean, I'm gonna buy a. I told you a little while ago that I want to buy a bottle of something for you to sign. This is the wine that I'm taking.
Good.
Lemberger, but the oaked one.
Okay.
I think the oak wine will live a little longer, right? Yep. Because of the oak. This is gorgeous. This is spectacular because it's a unicorn. It's different. The world can only hold so many Cabernets and Pinot Noirs and Tempranillos and Merlots and Syrahs, and I'm tired of them all. Lemberger is a thing, man.
One of the things I think that people have to realize also is every wine region has something that's going to grow well there, and younger wine regions haven't found them yet. The Finger Lakes was fortunate that we found Riesling, but we didn't find it for almost 20, 25 years. It just happened organically to all of a sudden be the grape that came to the top all the time, and that every year we'd get it ripe, and every year we could make a good wine. It's like Napa Cabernet, they're known for Cabernet Sauvignons, Burgundy, they're known for their Pinot Noir and their Chardonnay, but it took hundreds of years.
Yeah. Trial and error.
Of trial and error. And so places like New Jersey or Pennsylvania or Virginia, they're out there experimenting, and at a certain point, one grape variety is going to rise to the top, or maybe two. In the case of the Finger Lakes, you're going to have a red and a white that rise to the top. And
so you think Lemberger is a red or is it Cab Franc? Because before I let you go, I've been hearing from friends, mutual friends of ours, that Cab Franc could be the next it thing. But is there a need for an it thing? That's I think the primary, the question that has to get answered. Why isn't Lemberger the it thing? Like, I don't need to get paid. I would only need samples of Lemberger to make it the next it thing for whatever my reach is worth. Cab Franc is already super well known in like 10 parts of the world. But okay, Cab Franc that I've had here so far is delicious. I even spotted like a Dijon mustard quality to one of them. And this is my question. This is maybe a complicated question. I did not run this through your people. Not that your people have asked me for anything, because you're the most down-to-earth guy. I've never met an owner who so knows scripts like yourself in all the different parts of the world that I've been to. But obviously, Lemberger has something that's very unique to the Finger Lakes that I've never come across before. Cab Franc is big in Chinon, it's big in Napa, it's big obviously in Argentina with Gualtallari. It's being grown in other places. My question to you, sir, before we go, I've been hearing from some people that Riesling is queen, is king, is the white thing of the Finger Lakes, and it's amazing. Why is it that some, not necessarily you, are thinking that the next it thing in reds is Cab Franc and not Lemberger? That's the question.
Cab Franc has name recognition.
Right.
And I think a lot of people believe that you need varieties out there when you're coming from a new region like this. That's relatively unknown, and it's not Oregon, it's not California, it's not Bordeaux, Burgundy.
Makes sense.
That you need something that's recognizable if you're going to move outside your local area.
Yep.
Cabernet Franc has name recognition.
The gravitas.
Lemberger, it goes back to the Rodney Dangerfield. You know, there's multiple names, and you know, my next door neighbor who I respect dearly. You know, she calls her wine a Blaufränkisch, and I call mine Lemberger, and we have multiple Blaufränkisches around here and multiple Lembergers, and you know, I think Lemberger has a lot of potential here. I also think Cabernet Franc does. The challenge is going to be consumer acceptance outside of the Finger Lakes. And what does that consumer, are they going to reach up and grab Lemberger and go, oh yeah, man, I've had Lemberger before.
How do I apply to become the Lemberger ambassador of the world? I want to be.
Just start talking about it.
Okay, and so let me tell you what I think is going to happen, my friend. Before we wrap up, it's 50 minutes of talk amongst friends, because I consider you myself, not only my host, but my friend. Okay, so Cab Franc, name recognition worldwide, father of Cabernet Sauvignon, huge in Saint-Emilion, Pomerol, Right Bank, Cheval Blanc. You have amazing Cab Francs from Napa Valley, gorgeous Cabernet Francs from Argentina. I'm going there in March, from Gualtallari. Gorgeous blending grape in so many parts of the world, and in the Finger Lakes, cold climate, it's expressing itself very well, but it's more of the same. And I think that the strategy is right there in putting in an anchor, putting the flag on the moon of the wine map, because with Riesling you have it, like the whole world is speaking about Finger Lakes and New York Riesling. Cab Franc is like second class, like first class in the airplane is Riesling, economy is Cabernet Franc. Yep. I do not consider myself a Nostradamus of sorts, but they're gonna come here for Cab Franc, and they're gonna go crazy for Lemberger.
Yep, I agree.
Some people, and whoever is out there listening to these words right here, future wine bloggers, future wine writers, future wine content creators, future wine influencers. I hate that word. But you guys will come, you will reach the Finger Lakes, and you will be seeking Riesling, of course, it's gorgeous, and Cab Franc, but Lemberger is where the party's at. Delicious grape. Scott, thank you.
Eduardo,
thank you so much for this. It's been a pleasure.
It has been wonderful spending time with you, and I can't wait to see you in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, you'll come down, and I'll come again when it's not that cold.
And I hope I'm going to see Bird too.
The Bird is out there talking to your chef, my boss, the wine wife. Gracias, mi gente. Ha sido un placer hablar con Scott Osborne, presidente y copropietario de Fox Run Vineyards. Hemos probado unos vinos maravillosos que llegan a Puerto Rico con todo vino y Pan American. El Riesling de los Finger Lakes es una joya, es una maravilla, es una uva probada, es algo que te va a causar una conmoción de espíritu por el equilibrio, la elegancia, la fruta, la mineralidad. Pero el vino tinto que he tomado de la uva Lemberger es un sueño, es un vino mineral, sanguíneo, etéreo, es un vino con mucha terrosidad, con mucha personalidad y con un elemento, como los franceses dicen, un je ne sais quoi, un yo no sé qué. Gracias por su sintonía, un abrazo, será hasta la próxima. Dele a suscribirse y espero que ustedes encuentren su camino por el vino, una copa a la vez. Cheers, my friend. It's been a treat. Thank you. Gracias, mi gente. Nos vemos.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Este fue el episodio de hoy. Recuerda dejarnos una reseña para que nos ayudes a crecer, suscribirte y recomendarnos con tus amigos amantes del vino. No importa cuán avanzado estés en el recorrido de enamorarte de aquello que decían sobre el vino. Son uvas transformadas en poesía. Aquí hay espacio para todos. Salud y como siempre, dale share.